Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is time for another Make It Monday. Today is Monday, June 17th, and I am coming to you live from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, have been making cards for over 30 years, and my goal is to simply spread joy one card at a time, and that could be by sending a card off to somebody or to show somebody through one of my videos here how to make these beautiful cards and help them find their creativity. Again, it's just to spread joy, kind of one card at a time. I've been with Stampin' Up! For approximately 11 and a half years now, but have been making cards for about 30 years. Hey, Jose, thanks for joining in. And I just love what I do, and I like sharing it with people. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight. I am hoping everybody had a great week. We didn't have a whole lot of excitement. Some of the volunteer work that I do kicked off this summer. So I've already participated in a parade and a community event, worked at a bike rodeo. That was kind of my big week. And then Saturday I got to spend the day with Cece. So that was a lot of fun. And other than that, we are going through some very stormy weather right now. Nothing like a lot of people have had, but we do, I guess we're lucky. We are now completely out of a drought situation in our state, which is, and Zelda's coming to say hello. You don't need to put your rear in there. So that's good for our state. However, we are expected to get up to a couple more inches of rain yet this week. So hoping that nobody in the area has a lot of big problems as a result of that. I think we've gotten like 2.25–2.5 inches so far since Saturday. So over the next couple days, we're supposed to get a couple more, but we've had some great thunder and lightning to watch as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start flipping my camera around and go ahead and get started showing you how to make my card tonight. I was inspired, I'm going to flip things around here, by a fun fold that I saw, whoops, sorry about that, by a fun fold that I saw from a fellow demonstrator named Debbie, and I'm not sure I'm going to say her last name correct, Muche, M-U-C-H-E, and I just loved her fun fold and wanted to figure out a way that I could create it again using a new stamp set that I've got from the annual catalog. And I think the fold worked beautifully for my card, and I hope that you agree. Let me get my camera stand and stuff out of the way here. Oh, it doesn't look like I'm very straight though. Yikes. I need to get a little light over here too. I switched up my lighting just a little bit, and I don't think I like it, so I may go back to what I had before. Oh, I know what part of my problem is. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix that. I think I was zoomed up when I was taking pictures, and I think it might have stayed that way. We're going to work with this, and I'm going to focus on staying in my work area. So the bundle that I'm using tonight is called Adventurous Sky, and it includes this masculine type stamp set. I call it masculine simply because it's got a Happy Father's Day in it. But I know a lot of women that are pilots as well, so I don't want to exclude that group from this. It's got these wonderful dies. I've actually used a couple of the clouds and the plain outlines. I haven't gotten super fancy with the layering that you can do with this yet, but that will come. And then it also comes with this gorgeous designer series paper. And I don't know about for you, but one of the hardest things for me is to make really nice masculine cards. I struggle with that. And so I'm going to share with you this designer series paper here. The colors that come with this paper, and it's called Take to the Sky, is boho blue, copper clay, mossy meadow, night of navy, and smoky slate. And so this piece actually incorporates all of those colors. There's one sheet that's got all over clouds, the mossy meadow with the airplanes, mossy meadow with a map. These are great if you scrapbook too. These 12 by 12 sheets, I think, with the maps can make some really great backgrounds. And here is a 12 by 12. It looks like it's got a little bit of the smoky slate and Night of Navy in it, kind of just all over. And then this one you can cut up, you can make card fronts, you can make tags, you can decorate cards with the tags, options to go with that. And then let's just flip it over. Here we've got a smoky slate map with the air routes, pecan pie, just a nice background, Night of Navy kind of all over look, sort of like a screen. And then the smoky slate, squares of the smoky slate, and I kind of like a topographical map, Night of Navy with the boho blue. So that is the paper that we're using. And then I just want to show you, this is my mock-up using scrap paper of the card. I'm calling it a pop-up window card. And again, I got the idea for this fold from Debbie. I want to make sure I say her name right. Now I lost my little sheet that had it. It is not that. No, I'll find it and I'll repeat it once. There it is. Debbie Muche, M-U-C-H-E. So it stands up on its own. It folds flat. This doesn't, remember this is my mock-up, so it didn't quite lay flat. But it will with the card I'm going to show you so that you can mail this in a regular envelope. So just my little mock-up. I got to get back up here in camera range. It'll fold flat. You can put it in an envelope. Don't look at this one because it's not totally flat. That's why it's my mock-up. All right, here's my actual card. And yes, see, it folds flat. Now I am using these brads. They are called industrial trinkets, and it's part of the Suita products. These do stick up a little bit. So this is a card I might actually give to somebody in person, just because it has some bulk to it. For sure, I'd put a postcard or something in front of it. It may cost a little bit more to mail because there's a little bit more to the card. So sometimes I just say, you know what, I'm going to hand this to them in person. So here we go with the card. It folds flat and it will stand up on its own. And in terms of writing, I haven't done it yet, but you could put a piece of basic white cardstock back here and you'd have a place to write then to who's ever getting the card. So let me show you real quick how to make it. I liked using this cloud paper in the background, and then I kind of like how these planes look like they're popping off. You can actually see their shadow going across the clouds here on this part. So it's just kind of a cool effect to get. So let me show you how to make it. We'll start with our measurements. Whoops. I just dropped all my cardstock. So we start with a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 9 1/2, and it gets scored at 1/2 inch, 1 1/4 inches, 2 inches, and 2 3/4 inches. Again at 6 3/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/4, and 9 inches. The other thing that you can do is rotate, and again just repeat those score lines at the beginning, the 1/2 inch, 1 1/4, 2 3/4. It'll do the same thing. And then you also need a piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. A piece of designer series paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4. Another piece of designer series paper that measures 3 3/4 by 4. And then I've just got a scrap of the pecan pie paper so that I could die cut this picture frame. You need a window sheet, and this would measure 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. And then I just have scraps of basic white so that I could die cut a piece of the sentiment. I've already die cut and colored 2 of the airplanes. I just use my blends to color that. I also did a cloud. I actually had 2 clouds and somehow I've misplaced one. So I'm going to show you real quick how I stamp that. I've got to do some die cutting anyhow, so I figured it'd be quick and easy to show you that as well. And I'm going to set aside what I've got here, and let me just grab my trusty notebook. I use boho blue as my cloud color, but I did do second generation stamping, and so what I mean by that is I inked up my stamp, just did it on my scrap paper, and then I'm coming back in here and just stamping it on here without re-inking it. It gives me a slightly lighter shade of the boho blue. I wanted it to be more pale, kind of like clouds are. And then I pre-cut this piece out of basic white, and this is using this die right here, which is from the Stylish Shapes dies. Those are in the annual catalog. And I'm just going to use a little bit of my Memento ink. And this Happy Birthday Sentiment is out of the stamp set that is part of this bundle. So it's just this Happy Birthday Sentiment right here. And I'm hoping that I can center it and get a pretty good image. Not very centered. I'm going to flip it over and try again. Much better. We're going to go with that. Thank goodness our paper has two sides. Even when you do a die cut, the only difference is that instead of going in, the die is kind of punching out. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to let it worry me a whole lot. So let's let these things dry off to the side here, and we're going to start doing a little bit of assembly so that you can see how I make this particular feature on the card. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my designer series paper. You guys, I was so ready, and now I feel like I was not so ready because I've also lost my tape dispenser. There it is. Goodness gracious. This is not square, so before you adhere it, make sure you figure out the correct way to lay it out. And I like to just put adhesive on the outside of this piece, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. But we'll go ahead and get it centered on our cardstock. And I'm just centering it between the two innermost score lines that I made on this card. It does look like I got a little bit of my Memento ink on there. I'm not going to worry about it because that part is not going to show. So now I've got this piece, and we're going to do a little bit of die cutting. So I will bring up my cut and emboss machine. And I'm just going to create my sandwich. Because I am using a die, I'm going to start with my big base plate. You can see the thickness on that. And then I will layer it with my, it's kind of like a shim, layer number 2. And then we will put down a cutting plate. And first I will cut out this little cloud. So I need to get my dies to pull that little cloud out. And normally when I'm doing die cutting, I do try to minimize my number of passes, but because I've got that bigger sheet of paper, I'm not going to be able to do that. When I work with small dies like this, once I've got it placed where I want it, I just take some of my retired washi tape that I've got laying around, and I use that just to hold the die in place. And then I'm going to take my second plate, and we will crank it through the machine. It's a little awkward doing this die cutting on camera, especially when I have my camera down too low. Oh well. All right, and so now we've got our little cloud, and I'll try not to lose it this time. The real thing I wanted to show you was doing the opening on this card. So again, I'm going to take the same layer and I'm going to put this piece in here, and what I want to do is center this in the paper. So I'm actually kind of cheating and using my grid lines just a little bit to eyeball it. It does not have to be perfect. And actually that went pretty well. So again, I'm going to lay this in here. I am using the second largest square from, again, these stylish shapes. So it's not the largest, but the one in. And I'm going to finish my sandwich here and run this through. Whoops, sorry about that, I just whacked the camera. All right, this is why I don't do a lot of die cutting on camera, because it just doesn't always work very well in my space that I have for filming. All right, then what I've got here is this little square window that I can pop out. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that I tried not to put adhesive in the middle of my designer series paper. And the reason for that is I've now got two of those squares that I can use for decor on another project. One that's the solid color and one that's the pattern color. And because there's no tape, I don't have to worry about it. I could actually use the airplanes on the back too. So just a little paper saving tip, I guess, if nothing else. Now, to create the picture frame, I actually used a scrap of pecan pie and these two dies from the stylish shapes, the two largest squares, and I just made a layer and got the two centered so that they were lined up right. Again, I used a little washi tape, ran it through, and when you do that, you cut out the inside and you end up with a really nice frame. So that is what I did. On my first attempt at making this, I cut through both layers using both those dies, and then what I had was an opening that was basically caused me to have to put that frame inside the square instead of on top of the square. So I'll try to show you what I mean with the mock-up that I created. So here, this is inside the square, and on here I've got it outside the square, so it just gives a little bit of a finished edge. It's nothing you're going to probably notice, but to me it's more of a picture frame. It just gives a nicer finish. So I would still use this if my papers were prettier and matched and that kind of thing. With it laid out just like that, that wouldn't bother me. I just think it gives a slightly better finish. But that's the beauty that we have when we're making cards. You can do things that fit your style. Before we start folding along score lines or adding any tape or even putting this on the front of our card, I do have a 3 1/4 by 3 1/4 window sheet, and I am just going to adhere that to the inside of this card. I don't even care about adhesive showing through. I do care if adhesive is sticking outside of that, whoops, the window sheet, because then it's going to create issues when my card closes. So that is something I'm going to double check for, and I do have just a little bit sticking through, so I'm going to get my adhesive eraser, and that just gets that sticky spot off, so when the card is closed, it's not going to stick to it. All right. Now we can flip it over and we'll put this piece on. And so instead of sticking it inside the frame, I'm able to just frame that window completely. And I found that for me, it worked best if I use some of my Tombow multi-liquid glue, and I just put dots around it. I didn't want to have to worry about anything running out, squishing out if I press down on it. So I just made little dots going all the way around. Kind of like that. And then let me pick up my frame. And I very carefully started it on one side. I didn't want the glue touching the window sheet because then it would smear. But the nice thing about doing that liquid glue is it gives you the opportunity to just shift things around a little bit if you need to do that. So now I've got my window sheet attached. For adhesive, we're going to put a piece of our tear and tape, which honestly, I was so organized, and now I don't find my tear and tape either. Oh, here it is. I set it off to the side so I wouldn't lose it. Today was a busy day at work, and I think my brain is just kind of shutting down here a little bit. So we're just gonna, whoops, put a piece on each of these end flaps. Oh, I used up 2 loose rolls of tear and tape tonight. All right, and then we're just going to start by folding along the score lines, and I'm just going to take my bone folder as I'm doing that and burnish the edges. You do want very tight, crisp folds, because this is what's going to form these squares that flex back and forth and create the 3D look of this card. So you do want them to be nice, crisp, sharp folds. All right, and then we'll repeat that same thing on this side. And then to get the adhesive in the right place, I just fold this flat like this and fold it over. You could, for the first piece, fold the top part over. I think that works a little bit better for getting it in the right place. It's a little more challenging to do that on the second side. But now I've got that piece in place and my square is lined up. And so we'll repeat that. I don't fold it all the way in. It's folded actually at the second score line. And now if I push that flat, I can toss it over this way too. And so now I've got both of these squares set up. So to put these pieces on, anytime I'm working with a card that is going to be moving a lot, I like to make sure I'm using my tear and tape. And I just have to find another roll now. There we go. I like to use tear and tape just because it's a nice strong tape, and I don't have to worry that it's going to kind of pull off or anything like that. So I know these two edges here and here are the ones that are going to be touching my card. And so I'm going to fold it down. So I've got a flat surface, and I'm just going to put a piece of tear and tape kind of right down the center of it. Initially I did 2 pieces, and you don't need that much. And I'm going to repeat that here. Do you remember the old super strong tape we had like this, where you had to, it was orange and you had to try to get that slippery back off? Oh, that was so hard to do. All right, so we've kind of got this piece set up and ready to go. I'm going to take what is the back of my card, and we'll assemble that real quick with our clouds. The only caution I'll give you is when you are putting the window box onto your back piece, if there is a definite pattern to the way your card your designer series paper needs to go, make sure that you're attaching it to fit that direction. So for example, here I've got clouds, and in this case I'm envisioning these being the top of my clouds and this being the bottom of my clouds. And so when I put this on, in this case it isn't going to matter because this piece is going to be fine whether it went on this way or this way. But if you had a pattern to both, you know, a very obvious pattern to both, you would want to make sure that you're attaching it so that both patterns are running the right way. In this case, this will become more critical when I go to add my clouds and airplane and sentiment to the card. So now what I'm going to do is peel this off. I've tried a couple different ways to attach this front to the card, and honestly what has worked best for me is to eyeball it. I did measure, and we're in about 5/8 of an inch on the designer series paper part, and so I'm just eyeballing it. Like I said, I tried a bunch of different fancy things and none of that really worked for me a whole lot. So if you have made this card before, you have some suggestions, by all means let me know. For the most part, when the card is done, it's going to go right up to the edge of the card. So I did try doing that the first time, and if your squares aren't fully square, you might be off a little bit. But by that, what I mean is I took this piece and I just lined it up right at the edge of my card so that it was square top, bottom, and on this side, and then it will pop up. I was hoping I could do the same on this side, but I just found it didn't always work if things weren't totally squared. And so my preference is to eyeball. And like I said, at about 5/8 of an inch on either side. Whoops, 5/8 of an inch on either side. And this piece is the same width as the back, so the box is the same width as the back. And now if I fold it down, you can see that that's lined up and that's lined up. You may, when you do that, if it isn't fully lined up, just press it down flat and run your bone folder along this line and again along this line, and that'll kind of reconfigure those two and square it back up again. All right, so then the next thing I've got is my happy birthday sentiment, and I am just going to attach this with some dimensionals. You can use 2 or 3, however many you want. And I find it easier to work while it's flat, but this basically fits real nice in the bottom, kind of centered on here. And we'll put that as our sentiment. And then for the airplanes and the clouds, I found it best just to use my adhesive. And because part of this is hanging off, I just ran a little strip of adhesive on the front half of my airplane and not on the tail. That way, if it hung off a little bit, it didn't matter. So we'll just randomly place that one there. Got another little airplane that we're going to place up here. And then I have a couple clouds that I've decorated the front. I thought it needed just a teeny bit more color than what it has. So I've got my big cloud up here. Putting my little cloud down here. And that gives you then that window appearance with the 3D on the airplanes and things. And then last but not least, I am using 2 of these industrial trinkets, for lack of a better word. And I wasn't sure how these were going to adhere, but I actually just grabbed a mini glue dot from my dispenser. I stuck my trinket right on top of that glue dot. And then I could peel off the trinket and the glue. And again, I'm going to lay it flat and attach it. You know what, Zelda? You're kind of in the way. They can't see what I'm doing. Thank you. And then I'm just going to attach that other one there. They kind of fit nicely in the indents. And when you're done, you end up, you're blocking my light like a little eclipse, cat. Sorry about that. Whew, we're spinning like an airplane out of control. But that's the final feature. You could take, of course, some of my favorite Wink of Stella and add a little shine. Because, you know, airplanes, they're metallic. So we're just going to add a bit of shine. And I just stamped these images using black ink and colored them in with my blends. And I did take a little bit of a Misty Moonlight to add a little bit of color to the airplane. And that just adds a tiny bit of sparkle. I don't know that you can really see it. I'll hold it up here. Wink of Stella is kind of my go-to when I want to add a little bit of sparkle to my projects, or just a little punch. I like it because it does add that sparkle and it dries real quick. So I don't know if you can really see it on here. In person you can. It doesn't always pick up the greatest on the camera. But there we go. The window pop-up card featuring the Adventurous Sky Bundle. It's a great little card. It folds flat for mailing, stands up for display. It's easy to make, packs a little bit of wow with the overall look of the card. So again, I think people will be surprised when they get it. And I always like giving cards that have that little extra wow in it for you. So let me repeat the measurements again real quick. The base of the card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 with a layer of 4 by 5 1/4 DSP. This box part is 4 1/4 by 9 1/2, and it's scored at a 1/2 inch, 1 1/4 inches, 2 inches, 2 3/4 inches, 6 3/4 inches, 7 1/2, 8 1/4 inches, and 9. Or you just flip it over and start scoring again at the 1/2 inch, 1 1/4, 2, and 2 3/4 inches. This piece of designer series paper is 3 3/4 by 4. And then you can use whatever shape you want to cut out that window and embellish and that type of thing. You may need scraps of paper for that. So that's just a quick and easy pop-up window card. Thanks everybody for joining me tonight. I hope I've inspired you to give this card a try, or at the very least to send out a card to someone. If you make this card, please be sure to post a picture of it in the comments. I do like when people do that. I believe that we can inspire each other with our creativity. Sometimes it's just getting an idea. Sometimes it's seeing a layout like I did tonight. Sometimes it's seeing the colors people use and coming up with your own card for that. It can inspire people in many different ways, but I hope this has given you some inspiration tonight. Take care, everybody, and we will see you next week for another Make It Monday. Bye-bye. Have a great week.